Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to October. It's hard to believe, right? Didn't we just turn a calendar uh, like a couple of minutes ago? I'm going to try to get through this without coughing throughout. As you can tell, a little under the weather, but completely doped up thanks to a couple of doctors. So maybe I'll actually make sense today during one of these. But happy to have you in the next version of WZ's Instructor Insights. When they called and asked if I would jump in on this one, of course, happy to do so. Thought, what should we talk about for just a few minutes? And thought, let's talk about our life choices. Sometimes they work out wonderfully, and sometimes we get to learn from them. I had an old friend of mine many, many moons ago when I started with WZ. In fact, it looks like he's on this docket right now. Tell me that old age and treachery trumps youth and enthusiasm every time. And I chuckled, when he told me that. Love you, Goose. I appreciate that advice many, many years ago. But being 25 years younger when I got that advice, of course, I kind of shook my head to it and said, all right, pal, we'll see how that works out. But doesn't age provide a lot of wisdom? And at times you do wish you could turn the clock back and recognize some of the decisions that we're getting ready to make sound good at the moment, but probably aren't going to work out as best as we could. Lots of really interesting gigs that I've done lately all over the country, and thought we would revisit, maybe some of those questions that you get when you're in the field. But just, I'm thinking just personally looking back at decisions made, both personal and professional, that you just kind of wish, you could turn the clock back. I was out in Los Angeles just last week and went out a couple of days early to set up a meeting. There's a lot of great clients out there, and you feel like you've got your ducks in a row. You've got everything timed out so that you can make it around there. This meeting is 45 miles from this meeting, and so I'll give myself an hour and something like that. But you jam pack it, you front load it, and you get out there, and I've been to LA 500 times in my career. You'd think eventually you'd learn it takes a half an hour to drive to the mailbox. So you're trying to, skate around there as quick as you can and get to these folks, and it doesn't always pan out. Or, I had somebody shoot me a note last minute and say, "Hey, I understand you're going to be out here on the West Coast. I was up in San Francisco. Love to see you while you're out here." No problem. Change my flight. Go out a little bit earlier. You would think, right, the very first flight of the day, that's the one that's actually going to go on time. Everything's lining up, crew's there, everybody's on board, and then they come across and say, "We've got a flat tire." And you're like, the flight was here overnight. Could we have looked at this thing? Everything was set up perfectly for the day, make one little change, and just kind of shot the rest of the day. But, personal decisions that we make too, moving and building a house during the pandemic, poor decision. All these different things that we do relationship wise, probably just good one is being a New York Jets fan, looking back and rethinking the knowledge on that one. But also just from a professional standpoint, decisions leading up to these investigative interviews, get a lot of folks, or I do recently, that kind of have this, if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. And we try to regroup them a little bit on that thought process, on that choice. That comment will probably be the end of my career someday. It's frustrating to hear people get stuck when they have so many different options that they could choose up front. Any professional interviewer thinks that, one technique is just not going to work. One interview technique and one interrogation technique is just not going to be sufficient over the course of a career. We've got to be thinking about, different MOs and different cultures, different mindsets, different hurdles and fears that people have to overcome. And our DNA, as professional interviewers, just because we watch somebody do it one way for years doesn't mean that that is the only and correct path. Sometimes we see folks that struggle with certain techniques, and it's just these roadblocks that we put up for ourselves, and not being comfortable and having faith in a new system that we haven't tried before. You're going to have to choose at times that sometimes a dialogue strategy is going to be best, and maybe your brain is centered around monologue technique, as you've been through multiple programs with us and you know that one of our strategies that we teach is definitely a monologue technique. There are going to be times where we need to choose on strategy that focuses more on intent than trying to move somebody to a position of truth. A lot of times we've got to be thinking about trauma or things that led up to these conversations, and will we have the ability to access memory as fluid and as quickly as that we would like to, and what roadblocks will we face? Do we need fact-finding strategy or truth-seeking strategy, or just how much time do we have at that moment? This came up quite often this week, where somebody said, sometimes the bat phone rings and I've got 10 minutes, and that's just a valid point. We don't always have to transition from one technique to another. Sometimes we can end at the interview process and schedule something else to give them an opportunity to regroup, or us an opportunity to regroup. So choosing different thought processes and different strategies, I think at times is one of those decisions too. One of the folks said that they had just hired somebody. I know people go through this. I hear this all the time, that we've got this person we just brought on board, and everybody, thinks they're the unicorn, right? This is the perfect person for the role. 4 people took a shot at this person on the way through and thought, man, great resume, great interviewing skills, really did a nice job, going to be a good fit. And then, 30 days in, they're a clinical sociopath, and everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else saying, what did we miss? Well, maybe choosing questions that you couldn't get off Google during that pre-employment process might be in the best interest of trying to make sure that this person is the right professional that you need inside of that. So maybe we revisit those onboarding interview questions and make sure that they're not stock, something again that you could pull off a top 25 list, or get a little bit more comfortable asking questions, without physically reading them off of paper and checking boxes, and really not utilizing listening skills, and motivating people to be as upfront and vulnerable as they possibly can in that, initial session. I think a lot of times it's effort. And I know as a consultant, I'm very lucky. I've said this publicly probably 1,000 times, that I'm very fortunate. As a consultant, you get on a plane, you fly somewhere, you do a bunch of damage, and you leave immediately. And I got to tell you, that's the life for me. But that is not for everybody else. A lot of folks are out there and they have multiple balls in the air, between operations and personnel issues and time issues and audits and all kinds of different things that they're required to do. But when you have that many balls in the air, are we choosing enough time to separate ourselves from that, to kind of work on something that cannot be perfected, like the professional interviewing process? We want people, when they leave time with us, to think this is, just the beginning. What's the real investment post education? Can I utilize these skill sets and extend them outside of my silo? Love seeing the fact that we've got, all the different verticals kind of meshing at this point in time, where, yeah, we work with a boatload of human resources and employee relations and associate relations and team relations and asset protection and loss prevention and legal and GC's office. And that's great. But once you have strategy, quite honestly, you should be able to utilize that and, cross those lines and help each other. Can these skill sets, can I raise my hand, when we're getting ready to hire a new CFO, and, say, hey, let me be in the rotation to do this onboarding process, just to get in there and get a feel for, what this person wants, what their history is about, what their goals are, What's their long-term objective? Do they plan on being there for 6 months and then bolting the first time somebody comes around and offers another couple of $1,000s? Uh, are we practicing good habits, in our personal life, when we're asking questions to our loved ones, or are we learning different styles of questions that kind of lead people through a process, but then getting home and doing just the complete opposite and asking, nothing but closed-ended questions? I think a lot of times we need to kind of focus on the business versus, what is directly in front of me at this moment, and try to choose more towards what is the most valuable component of my day. What can I devote time to? Another choice, that we have is, are we going to have fluidity? When we get in there, what is our ability to transition from a plan A to a plan B, and if necessary, pulling the ripcord and shooting out a parachute to get out of that process and kind of regroup a little bit versus, letting our mouths write checks that the rest of us can't cash. I wrote down in my notes, something that's popped up the last 3 weeks on the road, and that is the order that we go in when we communicate with people. Again, this is one of those, when you hear somebody say, this is the way that we've done it forever. I'm not going to disparage that. I'm not going to say that that shouldn't be on the table, but I am going to challenge that and say, just because that's the way it's been done forever doesn't mean that's the best possible path in this scenario. Been spending a lot of time in the ER arena, the legal and HR arena lately, and most time in those conversations, there are multiple people, that need to be addressed. And obviously, if somebody comes forward, if a complainant comes forward, then we need to interview them first. We've got to make sure that they're on the right track before we move forward. But this thought process of, well, if I've got 6 or 7 people that I need to address, that I'll interview the complainant and then interview all the peripherals and then land on the alleged subject of this investigation, definitely has validity. There's positives to that, but there can also be negatives to that as well. So I always try to challenge people, if you feel good about the interview with the alleged complainant, what's the potential for contamination of interviewing 15 other people before arriving at the subject? And this idea that the subject is sitting around saying, oh my gosh, I know they talked to Susie, and I know they talked to Johnny, and I know they talked to Susanna. I'm worried about what they're going to say. That's not always the case. I got to tell you, a lot of the conversations that I've been involved in, the more people that were interviewed prior to the alleged subject, the more confident they became, because their thought process was they don't really have anything. They're fishing at this point in time. So they had a tendency of shutting down, a little bit more as more people were interviewed prior to them. So there's no right or wrong in either path. But I think, as professionals, again, we need to shelve that idea of this is the path, this is the only path, and think broader than that. Well, what about in this particular situation? Does it make sense to go from the complainant to the alleged subject? It doesn't mean because we go to the subject, we have to go to the finish line with them. We could always interview and verify certain things. And if we needed to, back out of that conversation and interview a couple of the witnesses' peripherals and then regroup with the subject if necessary. I think another choice that I love to hear people talk about is their desire to lean on people and get other people's educated opinions before jumping into that arena and just taking off thinking, hey, I got this. Look at all my certificates on the wall. Everybody calm down. It'll all be good. Now, obviously, we want to make sure that these people that we're leaning on are educated and have a need to know. But unconscious bias is real, and sometimes when you've had a lot of rotations in your career and you found this path, you kind of feel like, okay, this is the best possible path. But leaning on somebody who might say, yeah, that's an option, but think about this option as well, or think about they might say this, or this surfaced in an interview that I did in the past, or when people are trying to filter information about this is this person's MO. I'm sure there have been times, for me where you thought a dialogue process would be best. And then you get in there and you find out that the person can't form a thought in under 10 minutes. And you're like, okay, this isn't going to work. You know, these people that leave, 7-minute voicemails on your cell phone. I hope karma is real. These people deserve everything that's coming to them. But there are going to be times where you're thinking, man, this is the clear plan A. And you get in there and you go, nah, I should have paid attention. I should have listened to this other person's opinion on this. So lean on somebody else. Make sure that you get other people's opinions. And one of the last things that I think about is who's the right person to be in lead chair. I mean, this is a tough choice for a lot of folks. I mean, we're all competitive by nature, but this idea of, hey, this is my area, or this is my region, or this is my division, or this is my responsibility, doesn't necessarily mean that you are the perfect person to be in lead chair. In fact, I think professionals, if they have that, whisper in their ear of, are you ready? They're probably not, number one, but they're the ones that are willing to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, I'm not feeling great about this. Help me feel a little bit better about me being in lead chair. Sometimes it could come down to a history of that individual, whether that's a good history or a not so happy history with the person that they have to interview with. I don't feel like just because somebody knows somebody or somebody works for somebody that they shouldn't be in lead chair on certain occasions. If there's too much history in there, then probably maybe no. But I think if you have a built-in respect with somebody, that a lot of times you can use that to your advantage as well, as long as you cannot cross any lines inside that conversation with somebody. But that respect, it's a lot. These strategies are so robust that more times than not, if we just, are disciplined inside of them, we're going to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish in there. I think that, culture obviously plays a role in this. Demographics plays a role in this. That siloed thought process plays a role in this. Again, I love working with teams that have multiple verticals present and just convincing them that I get it. You're in HR and you're in ER and you're in the legal office and you're in the AP office, but that doesn't mean that you might not be the best person in this particular scenario to jump in lead chair just because it's not within your vertical. I think ego is a heck of a thing, in this industry, and the competitive nature of ego can be positive, but the arrogance end of it can pretty much be a death sentence. And that component of ego definitely, needs to be eliminated and replaced with, common sense and mental awareness. There are a lot of choices, there are a lot of choices that we make. I'm going to choose to get healthy this weekend so that I can hop back on another plane. Going to choose to enjoy the upcoming holidays. I know a lot of you are kind of staring down the most busy part of your season. So prayers for your patience and sanity and stamina. Very much look forward to seeing you guys in the field. And if I don't, have a great rest of your 2023. And, as always, you can reach out to any of us. If you ever need a sounding board, if you just have a unique conversation come up or a sensitive one and love a second opinion, every one of us are here for you. Just be patient. It's our busy season too. So pretty much everybody's on the road every week. But as soon as we're boots on the ground and can just find a few minutes of privacy, you'll get a note back from us. We'll set up a time to talk. So everybody have a wonderful weekend out there. Go Astros. I don't want to hear it from you right now. But look forward to seeing you soon. You guys take care.